Picture this. You walk into a Rolex boutique with $20,000 in your account. You've done your research. You know the exact model you want. The salesperson looks at you and says, "We don't have one." You ask when the next shipment arrives. They can't tell you. Maybe next month, maybe next year. They offer to put your name on a waiting list that could take years to clear. In almost every business, you hold the power. You have the money. The company wants your sale. Rolex flips that. You don't choose Rolex. Rolex chooses you. And somehow, people love the brand even more for it. Rolex could produce more watches. It could run a Black Friday sale like everyone else. It never has. The reason has almost nothing to do with watches and everything to do with psychology. Rolex isn't selling time, it's selling certainty. To see how that works, you have to go back over 100 years. In 1905, Hans Wilsdorf started a small watch company in London. Wristwatches had a bad reputation back then. People saw them as fragile and inaccurate compared to pocket watches. Wilsdorf didn't compete on price, he went after trust. Rolex became one of the first companies to get official chronometer certification for wristwatches, proving they could actually keep accurate time. In 1926, the company released the Oyster, the first commercially successful waterproof watch. To prove it, Rolex strapped an oyster to the wrist of swimmer Mercedes Gleitz during her attempt to cross the English Channel. After hours in freezing water, the watch still worked. That single stunt did more for the brand than any ad campaign. People remembered the story, not the engineering specs. Rolex understood something early that most companies still miss. You don't buy a product for its features, you buy it for the confidence it gives you. Most companies grow by selling more stores, more products, more customers. Rolex went the other way. It made its watches harder to get, not easier. Rolex makes roughly 1 million watches a year. That sounds like a lot until you compare it to global demand, which runs into the millions. Only a fraction of people who want a Rolex will ever get one. That's by design. When something is hard to get, your brain assigns it more value automatically. Behavioral economists have documented this for decades. The product hasn't changed, your perception has. Rolex built an entire business model on that one psychological fact. Instead of asking, "How do we sell more watches?" Rolex asks, "How do we make every watch feel worth the wait?" Here's the part most people miss. The waiting list isn't a side effect, it's the advertisement. When someone finally gets the call after months or years on a list, they rush to the boutique, buy the watch, and post about it. Finally got the call. You've seen those posts on Instagram or Reddit. Rolex didn't pay for any of that. Its own customers created the marketing for free. Every post like that tells a few thousand more people the same thing. This watch was worth waiting for. People trust posts from other buyers far more than they trust a company's own ads. The longer the list, the louder that message gets. But this only works if buyers believe one thing, that the watch they buy today won't lose value tomorrow. That belief is the second half of Rolex's business, and Rolex built it in a market it doesn't even own.
Buy most luxury goods and the value drops the moment you leave the store. A new car loses value the second you drive it off the lot. A designer bag gets replaced by next season's version. A Rolex often works differently. Some models sell on the resale market for thousands more than their original retail price. Rolex doesn't see a cent of that markup. It doesn't set resale prices or take a commission. And it doesn't need to, because every time a used Rolex sells above retail, the brand gets stronger. Think about what that tells the next buyer. If people pay more for a used one than a new one costs, the watch must be worth owning. That's a more convincing argument than anything Rolex could put in an ad, because it's real buyers backing the claim with real money. Compare two buyers. One spends $15,000 on a luxury watch that's worth $7,000 5 years later. The other spends the same $15,000 on a Rolex that's still worth $15,000, sometimes more. only one of those buyers walks away thinking their next luxury purchase should be another Rolex. None of this works without tight control over distribution. Most people assume Rolex owns its stores. It doesn't. Many boutiques are run by authorized dealers, often family-owned jewelers who've spent years earning Rolex's trust. Rolex decides how many watches each dealer gets, not the other way around. A dealer might have customers asking for a steel Daytona every week and only receive a handful of units a year. That dealer isn't trying to sell the watch anymore. They're deciding who gets to buy it. That protects Rolex from the thing that kills most luxury brands: overexposure. Full display cases kill waiting lists. Waiting lists disappearing kills the story people tell about the brand. It also gives Rolex pricing power most companies don't have. When demand outpaces supply this consistently, a price increase barely slows sales. Rolex doesn't need discounts to grow. It grows by protecting what its name is worth. Most luxury brands outsource. Cases from one supplier, movements from another. Rolex does the opposite. It casts its own gold, develops its own alloys, manufactures its own movements, and tests every watch before it leaves the factory. That costs billions. Rolex spends it anyway, because quality isn't about the customer who buys the watch today. It's about the watch still running in 30 years, passed from a parent to a kid, becoming one more story that proves the brand's promise is real.
None of this explains why Rolex has stayed disciplined for over 60 years while other companies cave to shareholder pressure and start discounting. The answer traces back to one decision. When Hans Wilsdorf died in 1960, he didn't pass Rolex to his family or take it public. He left it to the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, a charitable trust. Rolex has no shareholders demanding quarterly growth, no investors to impress every 3 months. It can make decisions on a 50-year timeline instead of a 90-day one. That freedom got tested hard in the 1970s during the quartz crisis. Japanese manufacturers, led by Seiko, released quartz watches that were cheap, accurate, and easy to mass produce. Mechanical watches looked outdated overnight. Hundreds of Swiss watch companies went out of business. Most surviving brands cut prices and chased volume. Rolex refused. It stopped competing on accuracy, since quartz had already won that fight, and started selling craftsmanship, heritage, and status instead. That single decision reshaped the entire luxury watch industry. Nearly every high-end Swiss brand today follows the same playbook Rolex wrote in the 1970s. If you're wondering why other luxury brands don't just copy this strategy, here's why it doesn't work for them. Scarcity alone means nothing. If a brand you've never heard of announced a 5-year wait list tomorrow, you wouldn't want their product more. You'd assume nobody's buying it. Scarcity only works once people already believe the product is worth the wait. Rolex spent over a century building that belief through explorers, divers, athletes, and scientists who wore its watches, and through the everyday owner who passed one down to their kid. Those stories built trust. Trust built demand. Demand made the scarcity believable. Believable scarcity pushed resale prices up. Higher resale prices pulled in more buyers. Pull out any one piece of that chain and the whole thing weakens. That's why you can copy a Rolex watch design in a week, but you can't copy 100 years of trust. So why does Rolex never go on sale? Because a discount doesn't just lower today's price, it changes what people believe about tomorrow. The moment buyers expect a discount, they stop believing the watch is exclusive. Once that happens, the waiting list disappears, resale prices fall, and Rolex becomes just another brand competing on price. Rolex has spent 100 years making sure none of that happens. The watches are only part of the business. The real product is confidence. Confidence the watch will last, confidence the quality won't slip, and confidence that owning one will still mean something in 20 years. Most companies ask how to convince more people to buy. Rolex asks a different question. How do you make every buyer believe the wait was worth it? That single shift built one of the most profitable luxury brands on earth. In business, the companies that make the most money aren't always the ones that sell the most. Sometimes it's the ones that know exactly when to say no.